The Mist and All by Dixie Wilson. I like the fall, the mist and all. I like the night owl's lonely call and wailing sound of wind around. I like the grey November day and bare dead boughs that coldly sway against my pain. I like the rain. I like to sit and laugh at it and tend my cozy fire a bit. I like the fall, the mist and all. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I lack. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along right paths for his name's sake. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Only goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for as long as I live. Alright, so the first of my two presentations is going to be on how mountains are formed. It's going to be a fairly quick presentation, but it's pretty cool. I've known how it works for a while, and I just wanted to talk about it. So, the way mountains are formed is, what you have these things that are called tectonic plates. And they're all over. You have dozens of them all across continents and across the seafloor and stuff like that. And the way a mountain will form is when the tectonic plates, two different tectonic plates that are right next to each other, start moving in opposite directions. So they're like trying to squelch together. Like this is two tectonic plates, they're trying to move together. And when this happens, what will happen is the Earth and the different layers within the ground will just kind of squelch up. And this is also, by the way, this is also how volcanoes are generally formed, is when this happens and magma gets pushed up with the mountain, and eventually, due to the aging process, I don't know why I'm racing the whole thing, due to the aging process, as mountains get older, they actually get smaller. They'll just slowly crumble down, and that's actually how a volcano will form. It will get shorter and shorter and shorter until it hits the magma, which is right here, because of the way it was pushed up, and it can explode. So, for example, we live in the Appalachian Mountains, which aren't very tall mountains, but are some of the oldest mountains in the world, and we know that because of their size. And mountains like the Rockies are fairly new. So that is how mountains are formed, and I hope you liked that presentation. On to the next. Now I'm going to talk about Washington State, beginning with a brief overview of its history. In 1805, Lewis and Clark reached the Pacific Ocean at the end of the northwest area of the United States. They were quickly followed by American, British, and Canadian settlers, and in 1818 the U.S. and Britain agreed to share the territory, which they called Oregon Country. Marquis Whitman and his wife in 1836 moved up to Oregon Country along with many other settlers and set up a mission in what was called Walla Walla in order to bring Christianity to the Native Americans there. In 1846, as the dispute between Britain and America grew over the territory, America and Britain agreed to split the territory, with Britain giving up their claims to the south of the 49th parallel and America giving up their claims to the north of it. The 49th parallel is an imaginary line separating 49 degrees north latitude. After this deal, more and more American settlers began to move into Oregon Country. And the Indian tribe there, or the Native American tribe there, called the Cayuse, blamed the missionaries for bringing all these new people who were stealing their land and bringing all these diseases which had killed many of their children. And so, in 1847, the chief of the Cayuse tribe led an attack on the mission in Walla Walla and killed the Whitman family and 11 other people. This sparked the Cayuse War, which was a very small war, but it lasted 3 years until the American soldiers triumphed and the chief and all of his warriors were hanged. In 1853, the settlers in part of the Oregon Country wanted to become their own territory, separate from Oregon Territory. So they were officially declared Washington Territory. They wanted to name it themselves, however the government decided to name it after the first president of the United States. And eventually, on November 11th, 1889, Washington was declared the 42nd state of the United States of America. So this, assuming you can see it all, this is the poster I drew freehand. I'm very proud of it. Of Washington State. I have little blue things outlining all of the different counties with all of them named and stuff. Probably can't see that, but it's there. And I'm just going to start off, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the weather and terrain, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about industry in Washington. So the weather in Washington, in West Washington, is very cool summers and mild winters because of the ocean breeze and ocean winds that blow in from the Pacific, which is right here. It also gets a buttload of rain and snow because of that. So, yes, the east side of Washington State is the opposite. It has very extreme temperatures in summer and winter, with in the winter it easily going below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the summer easily going above 100 a lot of the times. Washington State is also one of the only places in the, is the only state in the U.S., let me change that, the only state in the U.S. with a tropical rainforest, and it is right here on the Olympic Peninsula at Olympic National Park. There are 3 mountain ranges that pass through Washington State. The Olympic Mountains, to right here, and they also go up onto the Olympic Peninsula. The Cascades, which are probably its most famous, and the Rocky Mountains, also known as the Selkirk Mountains in the area that it passes through. The Rockies just barely hit the northeast corner of Washington State on its path down into the U.S. So that is the terrain and weather in Washington State. It's kind of cool. The industry in Washington, there's a lot of things that you can go into, a lot of different types of jobs that you could get if you go and move to Washington, but I'm specifically going to talk about 5 different ones, and that is agriculture, fishing, manufacturing, power, and high tech. So Washington State is very well known for the many types of things that it grows there, specifically apples, which it produces the most of in the U.S., and sweet cherries, which it also produces the most of, and it also comes in second in terms of potatoes. It's also very well known for seafood and fishing. It brings in the second most seafood of anywhere else in the U.S., second to Alaska, which is not really a big surprise. And it's especially known for the salmon and, the salmon that it gets along the Columbia River, which goes right there. In terms of power, Washington State has tons and tons of dams all over the Columbia River, which produce 1/3 of the entire hydroelectric power in the U.S. It's a lot of power. And it also has the lowest cost of electricity of anywhere else in the U.S., with the average of Washington State being 28.2% lower than the national average. Manufacturing is another key business in Washington, with Amazon being based in Seattle, Washington. The 3 cities I have marked here, by the way, are Olympia, the Washington capital. It's kind of small, but it's still the capital. Seattle and Redmond, which I'll get to later. So there are a lot of jobs that go into manufacturing in Washington for Amazon, and also, surprisingly, a lot of planes are built in Washington State. It's a very big place where a lot of planes are built. And lastly, high tech. Washington State has the highest concentration of people who work in tech of any other state, with 11.4% of its working population working in high tech. This is probably due to the amount of businesses, high-techy businesses, that are located in Washington State due to the cheap power and the amount of electricity that they use in their businesses. Most notably of these is the computer giant Microsoft, which is located in Redmond, right outside of Seattle, along with several of its other sub-companies. And a whole lot of game companies are also located throughout Redmond, Seattle, and just this entire area. One other thing that incentivizes businesses and people to go work in Washington is the fact that Washington State is one of the only 7 states in the U.S. with no income tax whatsoever. That is all I have on Washington. Thank you for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed my presentation because I enjoyed learning about it.